Thus, the two most distinguished African travelers who have published the most varied, extensive, and valuable information in regard to that continent performed the labors of their first expedition contemporaneously, the one starting from the north of Africa, the other from the south. I can but refer to the distinguished Dr. Heinrich Barth, and him who is largely the subject of this volume, Dr. David Livingstone. The expeditions were not connected the one to the other with the other, but had this in common that both were begun under the auspices of British government and people. A full narrative of Dr. Barth's travels and discoveries has been published, from which satisfactory information in regard to much of northern and central Africa may be obtained. The narrative is highly interesting and at once of great popular and scientific value. Hence, the world has learned the geography of a wide expanse of country round the lake Tsad in all directions, far toward Abyssinia northeasterly and far west by north as Timbuktu several hundred miles southeasterly, as far towards the southwest along the river Benue as the junction of the Faro. Dr. Barth remained in Africa 6 years, much of the time without a single white associate, his companions in the expedition having all died. Dr. Overweg, who was the first European to navigate Lake Tsad, died in September 1852. Mr. Richardson, the official chief of the expedition, died March the previous year. But unquestionably, the most popular of African explorers was Dr. Livingstone, an account of whose first expedition, 1849 to 52, has been read by a great majority of intelligent persons speaking the English language. Large and numerous editions were speedily demanded, and Africa again became an almost universal topic of discourse. Indeed, intelligence of Dr. Livingstone's return after so many years of toil and danger was rapidly spreading among the nations, accompanied by brief reports of his explorations, and these prepared the way for the reception of the doctor's great work by vast numbers of people. Every one was ready to and anxious to carry the war of his reading into Africa. And afterwards, when Livingstone's returned to Africa, and having prosecuted his explorations for a considerable period, reports came of his death at the hands of cruel and treacherous natives. Interest in exact knowledge of his fate became intense and appeared only to increase upon the receipt of reports contradicting the first, and then, again, of rumors which appeared to substantiate those which had been first received. In consequence of the conflicting statements which, on account of the universal interest of the subject, were published in the public press throughout the world, the whole Christian church, men of letters and science, became fairly agitated. The sensation was profound and based upon admiration of the man of piety, sublime courage, and most touching self-denial in a great cause to which he had devoted all his bodily and intellectual powers. It was reasonable and philosophical. It was not surprising, therefore, that the English government should have fitted out an expedition in search of Livingstone. Accordingly, the Livingstone Search Expedition, as it is called, was organized early in the winter of 1871-72, and under command of Lieutenant Dawson, embarked on its destination on the 9th of February of the last year. The expedition reached Zanzibar April 19, and the members were most kindly received by the Sultan, Syed Burgesh, and greatly assisted by the Grand Vizier, Syed Suleiman. A company of 6 Nyasac youths, originally slaves in a part of Africa through which the search expedition would pass, were being drilled for the purpose and expected to be of great assistance. But before intelligence of the Livingstone search expedition at Zanzibar awaiting favorable weather had arrived, the world was startled by the news that a private expedition provided solely by the New York Herald newspaper in charge of Mr. Henry M. Stanley had succeeded, after surmounting incredible difficulties, in reaching Ujiji, where a meeting of the most remarkable nature took place between the great explorer and the representative of the enterprising Journal of New York. Unique in its origin, most remarkable in the accomplishment of its beneficent purpose, this Harold Livingstone expedition has received the considerate approval of mankind, and Mr. Stanley has become, with justice, regarded as a practical hero of valuable kind. His accounts of his travel, his dispatches to the Herald from time to time, and the more formal narratives furnished by him, compose a story of the deepest interest and, when properly considered, of the greatest value. It is to preserve this story, in permanent form, and wherever possible, in the language of Mr. Stanley himself, connecting with it such portions of Livingstone's life and explorations, such accounts of discovery and affairs in Africa generally, and such mention of the newspaper enterprise itself as may serve to make a volume of interesting and useful information upon a subject of confessedly universal interest among Christian people, that this work has been undertaken. Chapter 2.